Welcome to Learning Unlocked. I am your host, Brit Bingold. As an instructional specialist in Gilbert, Arizona, I am a total nerd when it comes to classroom strategies and educational pedagogy. Educators are the key holders to unlocking learning for students. Today, as always, my goal is to provide you with resources and tools, the keys, to enable and accelerate learning for all students. Thanks for joining me today. Let's get started. Before we get going on the interview today, I just wanted to do a quick reminder that if you have time to rate us and write us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings we get, the more educators will see our podcast. So if you like what you're hearing and you think others would too, please head over and provide us a review. Thanks. Welcome to episode 21 of Learning Unlocked. Today I am chatting with kim.haase, our K-8 math instructional coach. Kim is in her 20th year of teaching math for Gilbert Public Schools, and she spent the first 14 years of her teaching career teaching 7th and 8th grade math at Highland Junior High School. When she became a math specialist for Gilbert Elementary, though, her world changed. She said she was always good at math, but she found that she was really just good at memorizing procedures and following rules, but that's not math. And what she really wanted was teachers and students to be able to be more flexible about numbers and mathematical concepts. So this is why she created Just-in-Time Math, and she has been sharing this with teachers throughout our district, and I can't wait to chat more about this concept with her today. Here's my interview with Kim. Enjoy. Hi, Kim. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. It's Friday, and we've been having such beautiful weather this week that I'm really excited to go into the weekend and have it not be like 100 degrees yet.
Yes, me too.
I know. And honestly, we don't usually get this nice of weather at this time of the year in Arizona, so we got to take it, when it comes. So, okay, before we get started on talking about just-in-time math and building students' math confidence, I'm just so excited to have you on and have this conversation because I feel like this is something teachers really need, especially because so many kids come in, right, and they just immediately say, I'm not good at math, right? So we need to have this conversation. But I want you to quickly, and it can be like 10 minutes. It's not, you can tell me as long as you want, but tell me the story of how you became an educator. Like, how did you get, to the point where you wanted to teach math?
So I guess, I was always that kid that played school and always just thought I was going to be a teacher. But I started college to be a teacher. So I moved away from home, started my first year as an education major. And then through that, I was like, I don't know if I still want to be a teacher, maybe a nurse, kind of going back and forth. And so I actually quit college, moved home, and started community college to be a nurse. So I was trying to get into a nursing program. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then my grandpa got really sick, and I spent a lot of time in the hospital.
Oh.
And realized that maybe I didn't want to be a nurse. I think I decided that because who I saw as nurses were the LPNs, which was wonderful, but they had all the jobs of like helping my grandpa go to the bathroom and like getting him dressed. And I was like, I don't know if I have that personality.
Yeah, that takes a special kind of person for sure.
Yeah. And so then I was like, all right, I'm going back to be a teacher. So then I moved back to college, got my same roommates, and then finished school as a teacher.
That's so awesome. I love it. See, everybody has like a little windy journey. Now, did you, when you graduated, did you get hired at a school right away? Like, what district were you in first? Was it Gilbert?
So actually, I went to school. I'm from Minnesota, so I went to school in Minnesota. And when I graduated, it was really, really hard to find jobs in Minnesota.
Okay.
And so I actually subbed the first year out of college. And I ended up being like a long-term, like a on-site sub for a
Oh,
junior
nice.
high, which was
Yeah.
wonderful. So such a good learning experience to be in there, but not truly be responsible for everything.
Well, and to see so many different teaching styles because you're kind of hopping into different rooms too.
Oh yeah, and the things I collected, like the everything. Like I had like notebooks of good ideas to implement once I was in the classroom. So it was a great experience. Um, so then I did that for the year, and then I decided I was gonna move. Like I was gonna move out of Minnesota, somewhere warm. And a buddy of mine that I went to college with, he was a teacher as well, and he hadn't got a job, and he said, "If you go somewhere, I'll go with you."
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, we went to a job fair in Minnesota and interviewed with a whole bunch of schools, but we said, if you hire one of us, you have to hire the other because we're going as a pair. And so Gilbert Gilbert hired us, and so I got junior high math, and he taught fourth grade math, and we moved out here. And so I started my career. My first teaching career was at Highland Junior High in Gilbert, and been here ever since.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. That's such a great story because it, first of all, you're like, am I gonna, because I was the same. I was like, played school, wanted to be a teacher always. And then for a little while was like, should I go into being like a dental hygienist or something? Like you always have that like moment of like, am I gonna, do I, is this good? Is this gonna work for me? And
Right.
then quickly realized that I talked way too much to be a dental hygienist because they can't talk really back to you. And like they talk to you, but like, when you're at the dentist and they talk to you and you're like, I can't answer you. You're like in my mouth. Like, so then I realized that's not going to work for me. So I love that you came here. And then I also love that you subbed and got so many ideas. I feel like that's a great way to get like a note. Yeah. A great experience for education. That's awesome.
That really helped me solidify that I wanted junior high math. Like I had in Minnesota you get a weird license. It's 1-6, so grades 1 through 6, and then I had to do an additional student teaching and additional classes for junior high, and then I had to do additional classes in another student teaching for kindergarten. So I had like played in
Oh,
all those
wow.
areas, but then when I was subbing, I was like, "Ooh, I love junior high kids. They are my jive. Like I get them. Like we get along really well." So then I knew that's where I wanted to go. So that was helpful.
It's so funny too because a lot of people are like junior high, ugh, high school, ugh. Like everybody when I said, "Oh, I'm in college, I'm going to be a teacher," assumed I was elementary because I was just bubbly and upbeat and whatever. And I was like, "Ooh, elementary kids are not my people. Like I am going to be a junior high or high school teacher." I think it's like you are, like you have to find which group fits with your personality. And not all of us are just built to be kindergarten or first grade. I mean, everybody has their specialty, which I love. And I love that you love the junior high kids because they get a lot of hate, but they are good, awesome kids that need good, awesome teachers. So, yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So, thanks for sharing that story with me and our listeners. I think sometimes it's nice to know, like, how did this happen? Because we have so many teachers in our country, and it's like, where did they kind of decide that this was going to be their calling? And that's something I think that everybody kind of has a different story too. So, okay, we're talking about just-in-time math today and making students more confident in math, especially those K-8 students. So, how do we kind of stop this idea, like we're conveying to students that their struggle to understand ideas fully and to process and reason through math concepts means that they're not good at math? Because I don't think teachers ever say that. No teacher I have ever seen or heard or even as a student said to me, "You're not good at math." But for some reason in my head, I felt like I wasn't good at it because I just wasn't getting it as fast as somebody else, or like it was just more difficult for me. So, you know, how can we promote that? Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's, hey, you know what? You are critically thinking, and that's awesome. And that's a necessary school to become an excellent math student. I know we have growth mindset, but for a lot of kids, this is a huge mental block. So, how do we stop that and kind of turn it around? Or how have you been helping teachers in the district kind of do that with their kiddos?
So I 100% agree with you. Like, I feel like when I was growing up and even my first years of teaching, math was always focused on correct answers and speed.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just looking for answers and speed. So if you weren't quick or you didn't get the right answer, you'll identify yourself as not good at math. And this starts as early as like first and second grade, especially when kids get into um, like addition facts and multiplication facts, and they've been timed, and so they're instantly think I'm not good. And so I love that we're moving away from that. We now know that like math is so much more than an answer. It's about thinking and reasoning and problem solving, and we're shifting away from that idea of fast and accurate to be reasoning and thinking. And I know, like, also we in the like my traditional teaching was I'm going to stand up here, I'm going to tell you this step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, you follow these, you get this answer, we're good to go. So that worked for, certain kids. It worked for me because I was really good at memorizing. I was really good at following the rules or the steps. But there was no connection to what it meant or anything. And so I think like we're shifting. Our standards are really focused on like conceptual understanding, and that there's so much more depth and reasoning to them. And so we are forced now to understand that there's more than one way to solve a problem, which opens the doors for so many more kids.
Yes.
Because, oh, my way does work. I just never had time to explore it before, kind of type thing.
Yeah, and trial and error and that type of thing, and that it's okay to have error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am a huge fan of Jo Boaler, who is a math education professor at Stanford, and she is most well known for her work with growth mindset, like you talked, but her brain research really explains how your brain grows every time you make a mistake. In her book, she has a mathematical mindsets books, and she really talks about embracing those mistakes and learning from those mistakes and growing from the mistakes. And like, we're not looking for the answer. We're just looking to try something. How does it work? If not, try it again, try it again. And she, like a quote is, the brain sparks and grows when we make a mistake, even when we're not aware of it, because it's a time of struggle and the brain is challenged, and the challenge results in growth. And so if we're telling our kids, like, it's okay that you don't get it, but try something, because through that struggle, you're growing and learning. If we could just get our kids to see that, I think that's a huge shift for us. I think for teachers, it just means creating that type of safe environment where kids are able to play with ideas and celebrate when they're wrong, but then work from that and move forward.
Right. I love the idea because it builds those neurons in your brain that like, okay, we've made a mistake. Even, okay, we're trying to struggle a little bit. In our classrooms, when I was teaching, we used to call that productive struggle, which a lot of kids were like, oh, I hate that when you say that. And I'm like, but it's true. Like sometimes we have to kind of struggle a little bit to get through some of those like aches and pains of new learning. But it's not like you're not being productive. It's not like you're not moving forward and creating these neuron pathways in your brain that's going to help you later, right? It's just we kind of have to sometimes get through those things to get to where you feel like you know this and it sticks and it's with you as a learner. And once I explained that to the kids, they seemed a little bit less groany. I mean, they're still going to groan, but I was like, this is really good for you because it's going to give you more a stronger understanding of what you're learning, and not just memorization.
Right. And I think like kids don't know how to struggle. We like, and me as a parent, me as a teacher, like it's even hard for me to watch them struggle because I want to swoop in and help. And so as a teacher or as a parent, I need to realize like this is where they're learning. Like I need to stop, give them that time and assist and facilitate in that growth process, but not jump in and take away that struggle, because then when they get to harder stuff, they just give up because they've never had to struggle with it. So I think instilling that super young is super important, because things are going to get harder in life and in school and in math. So we got to learn how to stick with a problem and continue to try new things.
Yeah, as a mom of little kids, I have a 4 year old and an 8 year old, and my 4 year old always wants me to open everything for him. Like, Mom, open this squeeze pouch, open this, whatever, and I'm like, no, you gotta do it. You can do it. And he gets that, like, I can't do it issue. And I'm like, just try, just try. Like, those are those types of things that even from that early age, letting them struggle through it, the joy and the spark that comes from him when he finally first opened his like go squeeze yogurt pouch for the first time. He was like, I did it, Mom. And I was like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
congratulations. Because it's such a big moment for them. But like, if we don't do that from an early age, even in just those little things, it does kind of catch up to them as they get older and they get into those school ages and things do start to become, hey, my mom isn't here. Hey, my teacher isn't always going to go give me the right answer. I'm going to have to figure out this reasoning on my own and use my brain and use my skills to do that. So it's building that confidence even little so that when they get into those trying points in school, they can have some more confidence for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. My experience as a math student, I felt math was knowledge change. Like I remember each step or link in order to successfully navigate the problem, like was crucial. Like if I missed a link in the knowledge chain, which I often did, I just felt like I wasn't good at math. Like I just felt like, and my teachers would consistently say to me, like, everything grows, everything grows. So if you miss it now, you're, next year in fourth grade, you're not going to do as well. Like that just gave me such math anxiety too. Um, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit now that we're shifting into a kind of a new math approach. But do you think those traditional approaches to teaching math are just wrong or are they just outdated?
So I kind of feel like, so the traditional approaches, or when I think of traditional, I think of like just the use of algorithms and step-by-step process.
Yeah, or even just we're talking about like the I do, you do, or I do, we do, you do, where like I felt like my math teacher would get up, do a problem, show us how it worked a couple times. Then maybe we would do a few together, and then like the rest of the lesson was like, okay, now you go do it. And like I just felt like I was drowning because I
Yes,
didn't
yeah,
understand.
nope, you're not alone.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I know, like, so I agree, like we need to change that up because we know so much more now, but I think there was a need. So I remember teaching seventh grade math, and there was no cell phones at this time, and the kids would ask, why do I need to know this? And I would say, well, you're not going to have a calculator everywhere you go. Well, lo and behold, they have a calculator everywhere they go.
Yeah, they proved you wrong. Yeah.
And back then, the focus truly was on calculation, right? Like it was
Right.
getting that answer, and math just meant calculation. Well, I still think kids need to be able to calculate and have some number concepts and be able to reason, but they will have a computer, a phone, or something to actually do those.
Right.
So we're moving beyond that. And our current
Okay.
math standards, they demand that the students know more than the correct answer. Like students have to be able to reason and apply their learning to new situations. And think of our world. It's changing, it's changing, it's changing. Like problems our kids have to solve, we don't even know they exist right now. And so we need to be instilling them, like calculation is part of it, but really, how do we problem solve? How do we work through something? And so with that, we have to move away from the I do, you do, we do, and have our classroom environment be more of a problem solving, reasoning, listening to others' points of views, being able to analyze what you're doing, what your students are doing, but then we also need to look at efficiency. What's the most efficient way, And so that's where bringing in, I did it this way, you did it this way. Oh, there's different ways. This one works really well with this type of situation. Ooh, this way makes much more sense with this type of situation instead of here's what you do for a problem for area. You do this, this, done. Like kids
Yep.
need to be like, well, I thought of it like this. And that needs to be celebrated and talked about and brought to focus. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love it so much because that was my experience was here's how it's done. Here is the algorithm or here's how you solve it. And I had dysgraphia as a kid. Well, I still have it. But having it in math and being in writing my numbers backwards, not on purpose or seeing a number, like let's say it's 789. And for whatever reason, my brain saw it 798 and I didn't know, I didn't know I was doing it. And so I would do the whole math problem and my math would be right, but I would get to the end and my answer would be wrong. Um, those are things where maybe, I mean, I just felt like because it was timed and I had that issue, oh, please. It was just so, I was just so anxious. I would just have loved to have been in a classroom where it was like, here's where we're, let's problem solve together. Let's look at different types of ways to do this problem. And then just having them like even collaborative work, like I was like really like in rows and not allowed to even ask my partner at some points in my math experience. Like, hey, how did you solve this? Like what, like, it was really, I just felt very lonely. And I like that you're talking about building conceptual knowledge together. And that way they can get to a deeper level of rigor, but they can also get to a point where they can say, I'm not wrong. I just looked at it differently. And then we celebrate that. And obviously you still need to teach, but it doesn't have to be that formulaic way every single day in the math block or the math classroom.
Right. And looking at the process, like my first year's teaching, like I graded by just the answer. And, kids fought me like, I'd say, show your work, show your work. Well, why do I have to show my work? Well, if you just give me the answer, I have no idea where you are in your thinking. So you might know everything, but you wrote the number wrong at the end, right? Like, I don't know. And so sharing our thinking and being able to say our process and explain it to others is super important. And then be able to compare your process with somebody else's and, oh my gosh, we got the same answer, but I did it this way and you did it that way. That just deepens that like true understanding of the math. But also like think of the kids, like I was a really good, like I can follow rules and memorize. Not anymore. I feel like my memory has gone. With every kid, it
No,
gets less
that
and
goes,
less.
yeah. I just think my kids took a lot of it.
There was a day when I knew I could remember everything. And so I did well. I think that's why I did well in math. I don't necessarily think that I was a great math student, but I could work the system, right?
Right. Yep.
And so if we're allowing kids to find different ways and reason through a problem and talk about the problems and have different methods, um, you can catch so many more kids, right? Because it's not just the kid that couldn't follow my directions this way and this way. So I feel like it opens the door to a lot more learning.
Well, you're not just teaching towards the middle,
Right.
right?
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
able to, if they're all working on something and trying to solve a problem that maybe they haven't seen before, maybe they haven't seen in a while because maybe they're getting some retrieval practice or whatever, and you're walking around, you can catch a lot more kids than if you were just going to be like, okay, we're going to go over how to add 3-digit, numbers. Okay, like, and then everybody just kind of follows along with the teacher. But if they were given those, and they're all working together and like how we're, let's show how many ways we know how to solve this. Then it's not, you're teaching to all different levels and kids can, actually help bring each other up. It's like almost like little mini study sessions happening in your classroom before maybe you bring them back to do something else. So yeah, you're right. It's deepening that understanding and that reasoning. And then, yeah, just getting that mindset right about math at an early age is super important.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I love that you have Maya Angelou quote saying that it says, "Do the best you can until you know better, and
Yeah.
then when you know better, you can do better." That is like that should be at every math teacher's like door or something, because like really, I think most kids, and this is me from experience, and even my 8-year-old, they go into school each day wanting to do their best and wanting to learn, and just knowing that maybe they don't know everything, but yet it's okay that they don't know everything right now. And then once they know it, they can do it better and better each time they approach that situation, that problem, that project, whatever it may be.
Well, that quote to me just is for my own personal life. Like in every situation, I am learning and learning and learning. And then guess what? I'm going to do better tomorrow because I learned that today. And
Yep.
it just keep thinking of my journey as a junior high teacher where I thought I was pretty good. And now I know so much more. And I'm like, oh, if only I could go back. But I didn't know. I did the best I could. And I didn't even know
Hmm.
that I didn't know. So,
Well, and that's where a lot of teachers are like, even having this position as an instructional coach or instructional specialist, you go in and I'm like, oh, I would have taught that way differently had I known X, Y, Z. But the honor we get to have as trainers is to go in and help those teachers that, maybe they're just so busy and they don't have time to research all these things and create these things. They're doing the best they can with whatever circumstances are thrown at them. And so sometimes it's nice for them to just be given, hey, try this out, because they don't know what they don't know, right? And all of a sudden they're like, hey, that totally changed this part of my day. Thank you so much for giving me X, Y, and Z. So, I mean, that's why we are totally, I love what we do because we're able to look at that and remember, we have to try to keep that memory of teaching in the back of our minds and think about all the time and all the stress and all the other things you have to do as a teacher and go, okay, this is really what teachers need. So that kind of leads me into this um, resource you've been creating with other math specialists in our district. So can you tell the listeners more about what you call just in time math PD in minutes? You've been doing it for our teachers in the Gilbert Park schools, but like, what are your goals for this for teachers, and like, how did this come about?
well, it really came about because that whole quote, do the best you can till you know better. And so when I was in junior high, like I said, like I thought I knew math really well. And then I moved to be a math specialist at the elementary school. So I had K through 6 students. And I realized that I knew a lot of algorithms, but I didn't know why they worked. And so now I had to go to explain to a third grader or a fourth grader if they're using this algorithm, why it works. And I realized I have no connection to why that works. Like I don't know why you move over and you put a zero. Like I can't physically tell you in words why that works.
Right.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
something I always did. And so I was totally like a fish out of water because I was like, I don't know, this is all I know, right? This is it. Like you just keep doing it this way. Well, that's insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over with, you know, we're not getting the results that we need. And so that's when like I went on my like learning journey. Like I have to have connections. I need to understand how math progresses. Like how does what they're learning in first and second apply to multiplication in third, apply in fourth grade? And like I truly started this huge journey of just like learning as much as I can read, as many people as I can follow and listen to. And I was just like, light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. And I was like, every day I was calling friends going, oh my God, guess what? And like telling them all these connections I made with math, which, okay, I had taught math for 14 years and it took year 15 to make the connections. Like, whoa, right? So I was like,
Right. But I don't think that's unusual. I think we just get in our, it's not, I don't even want to call it a rut. It's just we get in our processes and we're around people that are doing the same things as we are. So we don't think anything is wrong, or, you know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Like until you have that light bulb moment like you're talking about where you're like, okay, if I could go back in time,
Yeah.
this is what I would do to help these kids,
Okay.
right? Like I have those constantly when I'm researching stuff like, oh, every once in a while though, I'll research something and be like, oh, I did one thing right. But most of the time it's like, um, yeah, right. So I don't think that you're alone in that. Like you're not like I taught for 12 years and there's English and I would have done so many things differently now with all of my knowledge that I have. So, but yeah, so okay,
And
so keep
so,
going. Tell me more
and
about it.
so like through that, I was like, every teacher needs this. Like, how, if I could, like, I always just said, if I could just go to my friend's room next door and just take all this math stuff I know and just put it in her brain, like the connection she could make with her kids. Because if our teachers have the connections, our kids get the connections. And, but I don't know that all of us have those connections. And so that's when I was like, how, how do I get this message out to teachers? Like, and that's one reason why I took the job as the math coach, because I was like, oh, I want to share, I want to share, I want everybody to see these things. And so that was one of my reasons to step into the coaching world. But then you realize we are a very big district and there are a lot of teachers to get to. And so that's where
Yes.
just in time math PD videos came from. And I call it, it's kind of funny because I call it just in time math PD in minutes, but really
I
I
love it.
talk a lot. So when you think in minutes, you think 5 or 10. No, 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 no. I can't do anything in 5 or 10 minutes. It's usually about 30 minutes. But that's because I want to make so many connections. I want to show you where it came from before, where it's going from. And so the goal of these is to take a standard, um, and show teachers that connection, and so then they can build that progression with their kids. And that's why they're longer, because I'm not just touching the fourth grade standard, but I think if you teach fourth grade, you have to know where they're coming from, you have to know where they're going to get a true sense of what you need to do with your kids. So to like, so I'm like math PD in minutes. But then I'm like, well, if you came to PD, you'd have to drive here. You'd have to stay for an hour and a half. So I'm still saving you a ton of time, even with my long videos. Do you know?
Yep. It's true. Okay, and here's the thing. This is the time that we needed those because everybody all of a sudden had to be thrown into screencasts and making their lessons into videos with COVID. And so I think this is perfect because now teachers can get Math PD where they can see those connections and kind of broaden their ideas of ways to teach math, and they don't have to leave their classroom.
Since it's a video, like the idea would be like, oh, fractions is coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to now watch the video on fractions, not just it's offered in September. We're going to talk about fractions in September and October with you. It's there for when you need it, right? So you can go back to it, or however, it's at your disposal. That's kind of the goal. Like, I love PD and I love talking with teachers and having that face to face, but this is always a supplement that they can go back to anytime.
Right. And we've been trying to do that in our department too. It's just those really key strategies that we think are good for all kids all the time. Let's make some virtual PDs that anybody can take anytime. And do you house these on the PD the employee hub? Is that where these are on your page?
They're on the K6, our elementary math website.
Okay.
And so, and they're building. I'm just going to put that out there. Like, this year has been crazier than, a normal year, which I don't know when we're going to stop saying that, but
At some point, maybe we will. And then maybe we're just going to be like, you know what? This profession is crazy, which it always has been. I just think this is just really shining a light on it.
right. Because like my goal was to get so many more out there this year, but things happen and we do what we can when we can.
Yep.
So,
But I think if you keep this up over time, you're going to have a nice bank for teachers that they're going to be so appreciative of. I mean, I would have loved to take more PD, but like I was having little kids or I, driving one kid over to
lacrosse practice and I couldn't take an evening PD and I really wanted to, but it was just like, I just don't know how I'm going to fit this in my schedule. So I think having those videos that they can just watch and pause and, or, you know what I mean? Or just go back to is such a great idea. Such a great idea. Okay, as someone that has loved and taught math for 20 years, do you feel that teachers should be emphasizing math problem solving and math thinking instead of quick performance and the correct answers, which we've kind of talked about already? But are there math strategies that you feel like are helpful for students to feel more confident in math and make math more accessible and successful? Because I think we've talked about, yes, of course, we need to talk more about the reasoning behind math and why we're doing this way. Like, why are we carrying the zero? What are we doing
Yeah.
with that? We've talked about that already, but how does that make a student feel like that's more accessible or they're more successful, even when you just have that math talk in the classroom?
Yeah. So, well, like what's really cool is this year, since we have moved to online, I actually have been teaching an online math class. So all these really cool ideas I've been learning about the last 2 years, I'm actually implementing. So I get to see how they work in a classroom setting.
Well,
And
that's
so
awesome.
I know it's like this blessing. Um, so a couple things that I just love, love, love is the notice and wonder. So let me just talk
Mm.
about the power of putting a notice and wonder in your class. So I'm sure you guys have heard of this, but you just put up a picture or a problem. I usually use visuals of my notice and wonder,
Yeah.
but sometimes it could be a worked out problem or something. But
Hmm.
put up the problem, and all you say is, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And then I give the kids time to think. And this is where everything they say is valid. So some kids might say the background is green. I have to go with that. You're right. The background is green. Like they're offering up, they have an in at least, right? Even if that kid knows nothing about that picture,
Yeah.
they have an in. So what do you notice? And the kids start noticing, and then I say, well, what do you guys wonder about this picture? And then it comes up the wondering, and the conversations that go back and forth are just amazing. And it gives every kid an intro, and then it gets every kid thinking, right? Whether there's no right or wrong, we're just talking. Um, and then, so I've been doing this. I do notice and wonder almost every day in my class at some point, but the power is that my kids have gotten so good at it that they're almost teaching the lesson through the notice and wonder, as long as I pick a really good question. They're like teaching the lesson. So, for instance, like, I don't know, we were we were moving from area of two-dimensional shapes into, we're going to do volume and surface area. So we're moving into three-dimensional shapes. So I just put up a picture, and there was like a row of prisms on the top and then a row of pyramids on the bottom. And I said, what do you notice and what do you wonder?
I love that.
And literally, they came up with everything I was going to teach them. So they were defining what a prism was, they were defining what a pyramid was without even noticing that they were defining it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh, yeah.
Um, like at one point, I think I said in class, I'm like, I feel like some of you read my math book already because you're saying every single thing the book says, right? And then they came up to, because we had just finished two-dimensional shapes, they came up to, I wonder, like, if I poured water in there, how much would fit inside, which is volume. And like,
Oh
that's what
my
we're gonna
gosh.
learn. And I was just like ecstatic. And somebody
That's
said something
fantastic.
about like wrapping a shape. So they were coming up with surface area. And I was like, oh man, the power of this tool is amazing. Now I can't, when I first started with them, like I had to train them a little,
Oh, yeah.
but like after like 3 or 4, literally they teach my whole lesson. And then I can like go through my lesson a lot quicker. Oh, we already talked about this and this and this. And they did it. I didn't.
Well, now they've got some mental Velcro to stick their learning to. They have this image in their head and all of their conversations around this image. So then when you go over volume, they can picture filling that up with water. And you know what I mean? Like they have, because they've already explored it and they already see the value in it. Plus, when you do that notice and wonder, I've seen that used in a couple classrooms that I've gone and walked through. It's such a great transition between like a reading block to a math block, like getting their brains into a different mode of this kind of critical thinking exploration type of thing. And then showing these kids like, oh my gosh, like instead of just starting with a problem, here's what we're doing today. We're starting math with an image, like, or we're starting math with a, you know what I mean? Like a riddle or something that's just really like
Right. Right.
attention grabbing is we just can't forget those small little hooks along the way that like really help kids feel successful, like because there's no wrong answer, like you said, like the background's green. Like today in math, I knew the background of that picture was green. Like I know that sounds dumb, but for some kids,
Right.
like that's self-efficacy being built, and their self-concept of a learner in math is being built just because, at least if nothing else that day, they like named something in that notice and wonder image.
And another power that I notice like is they will refer to the other students like, oh, just like John was saying, but I also thought this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're validating what they heard from their peers. And that, like, to a peer is awesome, right? So they are constantly giving shout outs to their peers without realizing they're giving shout outs to their peers.
Well,
So
and they're also
I
learning
love
like good
that.
discussion stems and all the ways to talk to each
Hmm.
other in a respectful way. Like, I love that. I love that they're having those conversations around the math topics, and it's not just here's the problem,
Yeah.
go ahead and solve it.
Which I am so guilty of doing. Like, and
Oh
in my,
yeah, and I'm not saying it's a bad. I'm not trying to obviously put down a lot of teachers that do that, but I know there's more. And I know there's kids like me out there that just need that different approach, you know?
and the other thing, like coming out of it too, like I learned so much because some of their wonders, I'm just like, man, I've never thought of that, but that's a great question. And many of them I can't answer because I've never thought about
Right.
it. But like, where,
Yeah, you're like, you just got me, so hold on a
yeah,
second.
but I
Yeah.
love that it shows vulnerability that we're all learning together. And I truly don't know. And what do you all think? Like, what would you guys expect? I think that's power to them. Like, I don't know everything. I am learning too, and we can all learn from each other. So that does happen quite often where I'm like, huh, let's talk about that. I don't
Well, and
know.
I think students love that. They love to see their teacher as human. And hey, even my math teacher, who's like the expert in the room, is wants to talk about something I brought up today.
Mhm.
Like that's huge for any kid.
Yeah, I love it. So besides Notice and Wonder, before I started using those, I was really on a big tick, like a number talks. Number talks. I was doing a bunch of research on number talks, and number talks are a way to build like computational fluency.
Okay.
And again, moving away from that one way, that algorithmic way to solve the problem, where number talks focus on just fluency and computation skills, but we share our ideas of how we solved it. And so you put up a problem, and this is a computational problem. So you'll put up a problem on the board, and then your kids get time to think, and then they put like one finger up when they have one way to solve it, another finger when they have two ways to solve it. And the idea is to find more than one way to solve that problem,
Mm-hmm.
but then be able to share how they did it. So, and the teacher in that is the facilitator only. And so as the problem is up there, I call on a student, how did you solve it? And I'm the facilitator writing down the visual model of what the kid is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then did anyone solve it like that? Okay. Did anybody find another way? And then again, I facilitate that, and we kind of look at the two ways and we see how they are similar, how they're different. We make connections between them. Did anyone have another way? And so it's building that idea that there are more ways. And sometimes, a lot of times, if a kid got it wrong, they'll be like, I know where I got it wrong. Like, because after watching these ideas, they're making connections, they're self-grading them. It's super duper powerful. And just I'll throw this out there. Like, I did a ton of research, and Sherry Parrish has many books on number talks.
Okay.
And so that is something I would check out if you are interested in just bringing number talks into your class.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes too, so they can get that name. And I'll have you send me that information so they can look up some of those books if they want to.
Okay.
Okay, and you also talk about math skill as real life skills too, as a strategy that helps it feel more accessible.
Yeah, and I think that's anything. I mean, I often, and I'm guilty of this, but when you read a word problem, it's not always real life. So as much as we can bring it into the real world, I think that's just key, right? And I think taking any number or any problem that's just numbers, like numerical numbers, bringing a story, have the kids create a story about it, understanding it, like super duper important for kids, because then they see, oh, there's a connection to those numbers. And the more they're making those connections, the deeper the learning is going.
Yeah, or even just make it up. Like I used to make up.
Yeah.
I was not moving. Okay, but I would to teach my kids justification statements. As an English teacher, I'd be like, okay, I really want this new house that's being built. And let me just tell you why. And I would walk them through this like imaginary floor plan, or like it was maybe a floor plan I saw, like we had gone just looking at houses one day and I was like, this house is cool. But I would be like, okay, so I want this in, the closet attaches to the laundry room, which is like amazing because then you don't have to carry laundry. And like I would like get them all involved on why I needed this new house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, but the problem is my husband just does not want to move. Like he just does not see the reasoning why this would be good. And so I'm like, I need your guys' help in coming up with like the statement, the evidence, and the explanation of like why I need to move. And so that was like their introduction to justification statements and claims and warrants. And it was totally made up. Like I'm not moving, but they really thought like they were going to convince my husband that I was going to get this house. And then we talked about like, well, what would my husband's counter arguments be to all of your statements? And then, I mean, that was like real life to them, instead of me saying like, okay, well, do you guys think that we should wear school uniforms or not? Like that, they don't want to do justifications on that because they've heard it so many times. But like for me to tell them a story and have them help me was totally different. Like their buy-in was completely different.
Right. And if you have their buy-in, you're golden, right?
Yeah. And I had so many reasons why I should move. I thought, dang, maybe I should be moving. But
and then if they know everything they say is validated and thought about, whether it's right or wrong, like think of that. Then they're really like, oh, invested.
Oh, totally invested. I mean, and I would just like walk around the room like I was like walking through the floor plan with them, and they were watching me walk around this room. And, it's just, it took 10 minutes to tell that story. And then the rest of the year, they just would refer back to that. Like, well, Miss Bingle, remember when we were talking about you buying that new house? Are you going to get that house? I'm like, I just don't know. I think it's really expensive on my teacher's salary. I don't know if I'm going to get that house. But it's just giving them that real life example, I think. And storytelling, I think, always connects with kids and humans in general. We're just emotional beings. So if you can connect anything to some type of story, even math, they're gonna be more invested for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you say problem solving and thinking needs to be explored through progression. Can you explain that a little bit more for our listeners?
So I just feel like moving away from that teacher-centered way of teaching into that learner-centered is almost the key that I was missing for all those years. And it's that, again, I don't want to be the one that has all the knowledge. I want them to have the knowledge. And so like flipping my classroom into like, here's a problem. Maybe they have no idea how to solve it. And I love the idea. I totally agree with you. Pose a problem that's a real life, something about the house you're trying to buy or something to get them invested. Give them the problem. Let them work and struggle through it. So many questions are going to come up through that. And then as the teacher, as that's happening in their groups, I'm just walking around and listening. And I'm taking note of things I want to touch on and bring up. And so knowing, okay, that's happening. They're getting a taste of it. okay, what questions am I going to ask now? Or when am I going to stop them and pose a question? Or, but letting them kind of lead. Like if I know they're all on track, I'm going to let them go. But oh man, like 3 groups are struggling right here. Okay, now I'm going to stop. What question can I pose and ask that will help guide them in the direction? Instead of me just stopping and saying, hey, I notice you all are having trouble with this. This is how you do it. Letting them stop with their groups, think about it and share their ideas, and then hopefully go back to work and move on. So it's really like changing that I do, we do, you do into you do, I monitor and facilitate, you do some more, I monitor and facilitate, and then, but I do think at the end I need to be a summary. Like I have to bring in all together at some point, and how that looks is different depending on how the class ran. So like I can't truly plan for it 100%, but kind of letting them be the leaders and they're taking the direction, but I know what my goal was to begin with, and I know how to summarize that goal at the end. Kind of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're speaking my love language
Oh.
of how to teach, because no, I'm not joking. I feel like that is exactly how most teachers, really, I'm just going to say it, should be teaching, where it's the kids are exploring, the kids are talking, the kids are on task, and you are going around and you're not sitting at your desk, you're moving and doing some formative assessment checks consistently. I think a lot of teachers get stuck in the formative assessment has to be like planned and an exit ticket out the door or something like that. Like those informal formative assessments where you're seeing 3 tables stuck, but you're not going to necessarily stop everyone and give them the answer, but you're going to say, hey, I've noticed XYZ. I need you guys to stop, check this, go back. And that way everyone's kind of doing it too, not just those 3 tables. So you're not calling people out and then going back around and doing more formative assessments. But then again, you are the expert in the room to a certain extent. You need to have that summary, you need to have that direct instruction. And that the fact that it comes at the end, I think sometimes, and you flip it every now and again, is so important to keeping life and passion into learning for kids. And so like when you just described that, I just got chills because I feel like as a student, that would be so far more interesting. And they would learn so much more from those types of classroom scenarios or those types of classroom and learning environments than the flipped traditional way, I think, for sure. Okay, last question, and I think we've already kind of gotten there, but give me your thoughts on teaching math as a way where students are the explorers, so to speak, and the teacher is more of a facilitator, which we already talked about. And then finally, you're the leader of the quest. So we've kind of talked about how you already do this, which I love. And then clearly they need to lead students towards the methods that are the most effective to help them solve the problems the most effective way. So we've already talked about that. But what are some ways where you can tell the students, hey, I like all these ways that you guys have tried, but at some point, is there a time where you're like, but this is really the most effective way, and this is the way you guys, want to do it?
Yeah, and so it's kind of like a dance. Like you gotta watch and see, but I think like it starts with, do I know my focus of the day? Do I know my learning target? And I need to make sure, like, however they go, if they're derailed, if they're here, I need to get them back to that learning target. Because in the end, I'm responsible for, do they know this learning target? Well, they are too, but I need to be able to assess them formatively or whatever.
You want them to do well in their summative exam. So there is a point where it's like, okay, I want you guys to be explorers and I want you to go on a quest, but we also need to arrive and open the treasure chest, so to speak, if we're going to go with this analogy, and know what we're doing.
Right. And so I think that's where the summary part, like to me, is so important, because I know what's been happening. So I can bring in this, and this, and like, this group solved it like this group solved it like this. Which one was the most efficient? And the kids will tell you, well, this way made sense to me, but oh my gosh, it took a whole page of paper. Like, oh my gosh. Johnny's group, they did it like this, and why I didn't get it at first, like it seemed so much more effective. And so we through the trials of the practicing and sharing ideas, we do get to that. And I think the thing with math that we've been missing is I kind of think of it as like a toolbox. So like, and I always have like my tool belt, right? So I have this tool belt and have all these tools in it. And so one problem I look at, let's say they're all on, I don't know, volume, just because we're talking about volume. They're all on volume. Well, one leads more to using this tool because in this type of problem, this is the most effective tool. But like, gosh, this other problem, it had fractions involved in it. And so like that tool for the easy way doesn't work. I actually have to do something different. And I think that's almost the key is for kids to be able to see that like we have all these skills, but they apply in different ways. And I think we've kind of missed the mark when we teach chapter 1, lesson 1, chapter 2, lesson 2, and we teach them as like disconjointed skills, and we're not focused on the connection of the skills. And that's kind of where the just-in-time math or that progression comes in, because when you know the progression, you know what it connected to. And so,
well, and it's clarity for the teacher and it's clarity for the kids.
Yeah, and not everything is solved the same way. And I mean, I don't know, my husband, who never did really well in school, we were like polar opposites for school, but he's brilliant in math. And when we have like a math problem, literally, I ask him like, hey, and calculations come out. And I'm like, well, I need a piece of paper because I was never taught how to think like that, right? I was taught to write it on paper. And I'll be like, how did you do that? And he's like, well, I just thought of it like this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, that totally works for that. But I never thought like that. And I just think it's knowing that we have those options and we have all these tools. How do they all work together? And which one is the most efficient? But if we're not pointing that out and talking about it and making those connections on a daily basis, our kids don't see it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I taught solving equations in the equations and expressions unit. Now I'm teaching volume. But guess what? They still have to solve equations for volume. But if I don't make that connection for them, they think it's two separate things.
Mm-hmm. That's how I did. I did not see any connections in math, and therefore I didn't see the value in it. And I also felt like anytime I got something wrong, I couldn't catch up, or I couldn't figure out why I was getting it wrong because, again, I couldn't see clearly what the connections were, or that there were different ways to do it because I was just taught the one way.
Yeah.
So I think if you did this totally differently, I love that you also celebrate your students thinking that way. You're celebrating their differences and their different ways of thinking through a project, just like you and your husband. Like, that to me is so important because I feel like the more students are celebrated for their differences and their different ways of learning, the more they're going to be celebrated for other differences in their lives. And I think that's really, really, really important. So I love that you're doing this just in time math, PD, for the teachers, but I think in more importantly, as the teachers learn it and start to implement it, even though it might be scary, like you said, like sometimes it just goes off the rails, you got to pull them back. Sometimes, you can't plan for certain things. Like, I know teachers really like to have things planned out, like, here's what I'm doing for the week, and we're going to get to this by Thursday, and we're going to take this test on Friday. But if we can somehow break that and just let it go and let the kids lead a little bit more, not completely, like, I know we still need to have certain boundaries and hard deadlines versus soft deadlines, but letting them just kind of go and letting them lead. And then obviously having those big summaries at the end where we really do that concrete learning. I think students would be A, enjoying school more, but B, would be feeling like, I am super confident, I'm super successful at math, I can do
this.
And
I think, that just leads down to, like, I know, like, learning targets have been a thing. Like, you should have your learning targets on your board. Like, I knew that as a teacher, right? And I had
objectives, right? Like, I had to have my learning objectives.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Today's objective. Yeah. and I would have it there, but I didn't own it. Like I owned it because it said it in the math book, like what it was. Like I'm brutally honest here.
Oh, yeah.
But now I'm like, oh my God, that's my guide. That's my focus. Like I'm thinking of that through everything my kids say, everything my kids do. And so I'm constantly taking what they're saying and bringing it into that and bringing it into that. And so without that focus, though, or that learning target, me being cognizant and knowing that's what I needed, I can't do that. And so to me, knowing the standard and knowing what my outcome is guides everything that happens in my class that day.
Right, because then it doesn't feel like chaos. Like it may look like chaos, but then it's not, because if you're referring to that all the time in your own head and with the students, they know what they're doing and they know where they're going, but they're just doing it in a slightly different way. Um, and I think that's okay. Like you said, it's okay for them to go a little bit, or for you guys to get off task and you have to kind of rein them in, as long as those targets are there and you can continually reference them, for sure.
And then I think so I am the teacher that loved to have my plans on Monday through Friday done. But the more I learned that I can do that, like I can have an idea and I know my learning targets for the week and I have some slides and everything done. But I also know at the end of every class, I have to reflect, where were there misconceptions? What do I need to touch base again tomorrow? And it's not that I have to redo my plans,
Right.
but sometimes I have to modify and put things in to bring things out. And sometimes I can let go of things. So I was like, oh, that came out. They totally got that. I'm just thinking I'm planning for this week. And I actually just skipped a lesson that I had planned, spent all this time planning. And then I was like, they said all of that with yesterday's assignment. So guess what? Or in yesterday's lesson. So guess what? New plan, skipping that, moving on, because they didn't need it. And my old Kim would have been like, well, this was what I had planned. It's going for her. So we're doing it.
Because it's your comfort zone, right?
Right.
And you're like, I don't want to, yeah.
Right.
I totally get that. That was my last year of teaching, maybe last 2 years of teaching, where I would have soft deadlines and hard deadlines for myself and for the kids. And that was rough because I just was like, I felt a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I saw the kids' ownership of their learning go through the roof. So it was just okay, I gotta just like the OCD type A in me was like, okay, I just gotta let this go and be more flexible in my planning. But as long as I know they're hitting the standards, I have to let them just learn.
And that's the thing, to monitor that, right? So man, this has gone on for 3 days and they're still not getting it. Guess what? I can't spend any more time. Now it's direct teaching.
Yep.
Right? I tried to get them there. They're not. I can't spend my whole life here. I do have the soft deadlines and the hard deadlines. And so just knowing that and what I need to accomplish, I think then we work together to get there. And I don't know how that looks because it's not the same as.
Well, and sometimes it is, guys. Here's the problem.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to solve it. But you've given them the opportunity to figure it out. So now when they see it, they're going to go, oh, yep. And it's going to stick, right? Yep. Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we talked for an hour already, because I just love talking to you, and I feel like we're on the same page when we're talking about teaching. Okay, I have rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I suppose. Did you hear my Minnesota accent there? I suppose. Yeah, I heard it. Okay, so here's the first rapid fire question, and I want you to fill in the blank. Education is a lifelong journey. I
like that. Okay, education is a life, because you and I both are constantly learning. I mean, I think everybody's constantly learning, but we are that is our job. Yep. Yep, for sure. And research. Okay, perfect. Lifelong journey. Number 2, what inspires you?
I think I'm really inspired by positive people that are always looking for the good in situations. And I envy people that can find the good out of everything. Because sometimes in those days where I'm oh, this is horrible, And then I remind myself, oh, no, there's a learning thing. There's something you're supposed to get out of this. And so I am inspired by those people that can always find the good or a positive in every situation.
I envy those people too, because I think I'm not a half glass full or a half glass empty. I'm just like, there's a glass there and there's water. Like like I work with people that are both ways, and I feel like I'm neither, and I'm just sometimes like kind of like too much of a realist.
I feel like I can go both ways, but that's when I'm like, okay, somebody fill my glass. I got to get out of here.
Right. Like sometimes I want to push into a direction, like I need those people in my life that, can tell me like, no, it's going to be fine. Or I need these people in my life that are like, no, we're in like the engine light is blinking and we have to fix this problem now. Like
Right.
because otherwise I'll just kind of sit in the middle. Okay. Number 3, if you could pass on any wisdom to your students, what would you share with them? And it doesn't have to be content specific, like anything.
Okay. So I just think that this is in life because I keep telling myself this and my kids at home. Like I'm full of anxiety. And like new things scare me. So like just don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and try new things, even though it's hard. But when you're going in there into new things, just expect that you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Because you're always learning and growing through those mistakes. And if you just never tried anything new, you're not making any growth. You're just on that same path. And so
I love that.
It's just something I keep replying to myself, keep telling my kids.
That's wise, man. You're going to fall on your face, but you got to get back up, and you got to know that that's part of being a human being.
Right. And celebrate when things go well that first time, but that doesn't always happen. And so you got to grow from every experience.
Okay. What are your must-have smartphone apps?
So I guess I'm not really a techie person, but like I do use Pinterest a lot. So recipes.
Do you use it personal? Oh, recipes.
Recipes
Okay. Yeah.
and decorating. Those are like, and clothes. Those are like my 3 go-tos.
Yeah, I have Pinterest. I love Pinterest. Do you use any type of like are you a podcast listener? Do you use any like audiobooks, anything like that?
No, I need to get better at that.
No, you don't.
I seriously am doing like, that a lot.
Yes. No, I think you've been doing awesome. You have been making screencasts and in minutes. So you are a techie person. I don't want to hear that anymore. You are now officially a techie person.
I have a sister-in-law that is in social media. That's her branding, social media. And like, she sends me podcasts all the time because we both have teenage daughters. This is a good one. This is a good one. But I have a list. That's as far as I got.
I listen to them when I'm putting on my makeup. And if I'm not done with my makeup and hair by the time the podcast is over, I'm late.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I don't know if that helps anybody else in the world, because I can't listen to them with my kids in the car because they're talking to me. So at the only time in my day where I enjoy listening to them because I learn a lot of different, and I don't listen to all education ones. I listen to all kinds of different things. But I'm like, ooh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it in the morning when I'm getting ready, because that's kind of like the only time I'm alone because everybody's kind of asleep. And I just listen to it while I'm getting ready, and it kind of keeps me moving and wakes my brain up a little bit.
That is a good idea. That's because that's kind of wasted time. Like,
Yeah, I'm just sitting there. I'm doing that. I don't know what men are going to do. Men,
yeah, they're
have a lot to do in the morning. And so we've got some time to listen to some podcasts. Okay. What is a song that you know all the lyrics to?
How about Journey, Don't Stop Believing?
Oh, yeah, baby. I know all those lyrics because it was the only song that would make my daughter, who was colicky, stopped crying. Is if we sang her Don't Stop Believing. She loved that song. So I know all the lyrics to that song too. Oh my gosh. Okay, Kim, it's been so great having you on and talking about this. I love it. If listeners want to learn more from you, where can they find you?
So really just my email, which is kim.haase @gilbertschools.net. Remember, my tech skills need to be improved. So that's all I got.
We're going to get you at least one social media. And then that way you can post some of these awesome things you're doing with your just-in-time math, and they can follow you there. And that would be so awesome. But I will put your email in the show notes, and so everybody can get that. Thank you so much for coming on today on a Friday morning. I so appreciate you and everything that you're doing for our teachers and students in the district. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Learning Unlocked and finding out more about just-in-time math. If you have listened today as a GPS educator, you can receive PD recertification credit by visiting our Employee Hub page and navigating to professional growth and then digital PD courses. Just a reminder that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GPS Prof Growth. That's at GPS PROF GROWTH. For more information or resources from this episode, please visit our website at learningunlocked.libsyn.com/website. We are distributed by Libsyn to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Audible. Episodes are also available on our PGT YouTube channel under playlists. Our intro and outro music are licensed by Melody Loops. Thanks again, key holders. Keep unlocking curiosity, creativity, and innovation with your students. Stay kind and courageous, and I'll see you next time.